Okay, I'm calling the Bucyrus City Council Ad Hoc Committee meeting to order on Thursday, October 21st at 7:57 p.m. Members present: Kevin Myers, C. Aaron Sherrick, James Me, and myself, Chair. Public participation.
Sean, 1108 Hillcrest Drive. Let me see here if I lost that. Yeah, at the September 23rd, 21 committee meetings, we spoke about no longer having the joint regular committee meetings. And I think it was the first committee meeting in October. Oh, thank you. First committee meeting in October that we started doing separate committee meetings. With that being said, there needs to be an amendment done to 111.01 B, where right now it says a joint regular council committee meeting shall be held at 6 p.m. on the Thursday immediately following the regularly scheduled council meeting. The joint regular council committee meeting shall include all standing committees: economic development, finance, health and safety, plating, public lands and buildings, and service. We're going to have to change that because we're no longer doing joint regular council committee meetings.
Wording on that, because the committees are still meeting jointly, but not one separate meeting. It's
right.
six multiple meetings. So is it just the word joint really needs to be removed?
I would have to look at it, see, but I can.
Well, I mean, that definitely has to be taken out, but I still think there might need to be a little different wording.
It also says all committees are meeting.
Yeah.
And
Well,
not all committees do
I
meet.
feel that all committees should always meet because, even if we say, well, there's nothing to come before this committee
Right.
tonight, she
Somebody in
might
the
want to
audience.
stand up and say something.
Mhm.
We have public participation for each committee rather than jointly. So I think that all committees need to be called to order just for the purpose to find out if there's anybody that wants to
Right.
speak. Unless we had some kind of a sign-in sheet. I don't know if that takes the public's right to speak away from them any.
I was doing some quick checking today, and I think the last, this B, we never had a B before. That was put in April of 2015. So, because I wanted to check back and see, well, how was it worded before? And I think that was one of the issues, and I think that all came about, with the suit that I had against the city, was the city has to have established how their committees are meeting, when they're meeting. There needed to be...
Not just willy-nilly
Right,
whenever they wanted
and that
to.
wasn't done, and that's what resulted in the passage of this, because now they were establishing, okay, the meetings are going to meet on Thursday at 6 p.m. And then, I don't know who came up with, well, let's just do a joint. I don't know.
I think Sis did.
I think so too. Oh.
Kurt Fankhauser, I'm gonna use 1415 Michigan Road. In the office, when I was council president, I did find some notes that said, and they looked pretty old. maybe Regina passed them on to Kelly or somebody or whatever when she became council clerk, but in these old notes, it said, you know, all committee meetings are considered special meetings. And when I was reading through the Robert's Rules of Order a couple times last year, I did see something in there that would kind of give indication to the subcommittees of the, you know, the meeting body that would indicate that a committee meeting is considered a special meeting all the time.
Even when they're scheduled every
Yeah.
2 weeks?
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, it sounds like kind of a gray area.
I thought that when they made it a definite meeting time, that's when they took away
Well,
the special meeting.
and
unless
this
you
is
know-
where the Robert's Rules of Order comes in. You'll have to look at it yourself, and maybe Brian can do some research. But there was indication in the Robert Rules of Order that you couldn't put a regular meeting time for like the committees and the subcommittee stuff. It had to, they had to be special, considered special all the time. You know, I'm gonna let Brian do some research on that.
Right. That would also be sort of a Ohio Revised Code versus Robert's Rules interpretation as well, depending on if there is something on point as far as the revised code for that.
Oh, and the other thing, you know, as far as, should, like Kevin just suggested, should all the committees meet just for the purpose of somebody doing public participation? If I was still up there, I would be pushing not for that, just because every time a committee meets, you're opening up a meeting and now you've created more minutes to do. So you know, you might have a meeting start and nobody even participate, but now you still gotta have minutes, you still gotta pass it, and you know, just more stuff unnecessarily, in my opinion.
So that was just, you know, I wanted to bring that to your attention. And as far as, I believe the purpose of tonight's meeting, the main purpose is to talk about minutes. I would like to be able to come back. I want to hear what you folks have to say first, and then I would like to come back and do my public participation at that time, so.
I have no opposition to that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I would look at 111.01B and get you guys
Yeah.
some sort of
Rewording
rewording for your look.
and make sure
Perusal.
that it, like Kurt brought up, make sure that it's
Right.
special
If we
versus
have to call
regularly
them
scheduled.
special, correct.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
One of the things I think I'd like to just kind of throw out there, we've got, what, 2 months? 2.5 months left with this term of council to where the new council will look at their rules and procedures. I don't know how much reinventing the wheel we want to do for these last 2 months versus, you know, the issue that brought us here, this discussion was the minutes. You know, maybe we just work on succinctly preparing the minutes in similar fashion for these last 2.5 months. And let the new term council create their rules at that point.
I personally think we need to get something, I can't sit here and listen to every single meeting where everything's a big mess, and by the time you're through the big mess, everybody's so confused or so burnt out. So you just want to just roll over and say, let's just keep doing it this way. Do you see how many mistakes happened tonight that have happened over the last few weeks? Between people rushing things and people being so frustrated by the time they get to a certain point because they don't know which way's up. We've got to figure out a way to cut that out. If that means getting tonight a rule as to how we're going to try to do things just to get through this year and see, and if it works, that saves the next council from having to figure out a whole new way to redo things, because right now we have all new people heading in, for the
Right.
most part. We have all new people right here at the very top. I
Are you
mean,
suggesting though that there's rules in the legislation that need changed, or are we just talking maybe there's things administratively that can be done a little different?
Well,
Like,
the ad hoc creates the way that we do things, right? So we were.
Not
coming at this-
necessarily.
We were coming at this for how to do minutes.
Not necessarily, and I'll use this as a for instance. If the council president, who is the supervisor to the clerk, says, hey, I'd like you to be a little more succinct in recording of your minutes, that's not in how the legislation of 111 is. So I think some things can be done to try to clean up some of the mess you're bringing up without changing the legislation is what I'm suggesting. I think we're both barking up the same tree to some extent, just on different sides of the tree.
Or different trees.
Jim? I know you're trying to,
I got nothing. I don't know, do you? I don't know how to say it, do you want to? How do you clarify the minutes? I mean, we can't do it word for word.
that's
There's
what I'm
no
saying.
way
Just
we can
wanna
do
do
this
it.
word for word. And picking and choosing what words should be word for word, and that just,
We can get, if you have some, let me.
I have an idea.
This is.
I have an idea, do you want it? Okay. So, she's been giving us these really cool, I would love to have them separated by group though, because I hate trying to dig through. I love you, but please give me more
I'll put
staples.
them in order
Yeah.
on the committee this time. Everything.
But if I had
is-
each committee stapled separately, I'd be so much better. I won't lie, but that's just me.
Put a post-it
But-
note hanging out of each one.
Yeah, something, yeah. She's like, I drew on purple the other night. But like these, they're like a rough outline. And I really kind of like the idea of the rough outline. And then when you have approval of minutes, you could have next to 5/24/21. Corrected minutes, accepted, or whatever, motion made by, and just the very basic of who spoke on it, who made the motion, and then whether or not it passed. I mean, and we could do it right next, we could keep it in this format and just, so under I, you'd have the little whatever, whatever the next one is, because, it all depends on how you start it. Because if you had ones and twos for the different things, and then you go to the big A, then you can go to the little one and the little a, things like that. But yeah, depending on however she puts it out, to put those things in there.
Right.
Plus, you can find in the meeting what you're looking for. So if Vicki came in and said that she only wanted to figure out what was in the appropriations, she could skim down through to where appropriations are, over to the information she needed, and it's all there, easier to read. Because right now, you're looking through paragraphs of stuff, and you're trying to find that one thing, like when we've been talking about wanting to find where we talked about parking lots. Nobody was able to find in those minutes where we talked about parking lots. We got the dates, but, those were such paragraphs of minutes.
Which is what I was getting at about being more succinct in the minutes, exactly. And the other thing is, somebody at some point mentioned, using video or audio as your minutes. My issue with that is real old-fashioned, if you will. What happens 70 years from now when the tape recorder or the computer that you use to record those things is no longer a viable option? Because we don't know what the hell's going to be invented in 70 years, and we've got written stuff that goes into the safe, and I really think that we need to keep that.
And that's why I was kind of like, if we could do something like this where it's more of an outline, where everything's pointed out, but it's neatly, and then we could put the audio recording date or whatever on the bottom. We can, because she can put that as a link in the computer at this point in time where it's written. Like, before it's printed out while it's on the computer, it's a link.
But it may not.
And I do understand that sometimes it cuts out, sometimes it doesn't pick us up, sometimes, or it picks up the people out here instead of us. I don't know how many times I've heard more of the conversation here than I've heard here when I've watched them online. But that's like 3 times different, There's a tape, there's the audio, there's,
So you're talking about putting the changes on
But we
there?
can put those at the bottom.
The
So
changes.
you also have those to look back on. So if you're looking here and it's approval of minutes, it says something about Truca asked for a motion and, me seconded, and you had a question about that, you can then click on that link and go back to it. You can then listen to it as well. But that way it's not paragraphs of stuff that gets really embedded.
Let her finish.
The main benefit I see to the written minutes, when they get put on the documents on demand, that search tool on that site, if you search for a specific word or a phrase, it globally searches every document on there. So if you wanted to say, just for example, Pines Reservoir, if you search that, it'll come up, it'll show you immediately every minute, every committee meeting that phrase was in there. It's very helpful to go back and find stuff. And then if you, and then
the word.
Yep.
and then if you further wanted to get, I'm an advocate of having continued the audio recordings too, so that if you want even further detail, you can say, okay, I see they were talking about that in that meeting. I'm gonna go into the audio recording and just listen to it and see if there's even more detail.
Yep.
So,
That's kind of what I was saying, but like more succinct here, and then have the link. So when you're on documents on demand, the link would be there, because here we just have it printed out. You can't touch where it's printed here.
well,
and
the
be able
way
to
I
see it,
always
but-
did it was I seen that this committee meeting was on this date, so then I just went over to the audio recordings and looked at the date of that audio recording. I mean,
So take that step out too. I mean, it's still there, they're still there, because all you're doing is
it
putting that
wasn't,
link.
I mean, it was super easy, but the one disadvantage I see, and tonight was a perfect example, if you got rid of paper minutes and you were all, I don't even know if you guys took considering that.
I'm pretty sure everybody was against getting rid
You
of
were
paper
against
minutes.
that?
Yeah, I can't fathom a world where we want to get rid
Well,
of
I'm just
paper
gonna use
minutes.
this example, the rezoning on West Stone Street. I mean, could you imagine if all them parcel numbers, it was only on an audio recording and there was a discrepancy and you're like, oh, we gotta go back to the meeting, and you could end up getting to the point where you're playing back an audio recording at the meeting itself. And then that's just gonna,
I did read all of them at the first reading.
you played the audio?
No, she read them,
I read them
so they would have been on the audio.
at the first reading.
Right, no, his point was that,
If
could
you
you
had
imagine if we
replayed
had to
that
refer
audio.
back to, we'd have to listen to them.
So much more easier if it's black and white on paper.
Yeah.
That says this parcel number, that, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
Well, we still could do it succinctly, like Vicky agreed that we could just put those down at the bottom
But yeah, he's
and still show them.
He's still on the idea of getting rid of paper and being against
No,
that.
no,
So, yeah.
not,
Yeah.
no,
I
we
think
need to
we're-
keep the
We're all
paper.
about paper.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm
there's-
glad I didn't know. I thought you guys,
No.
at the
No.
last meeting or something, it was.
No, we were just trying to figure out how to straighten this so there's not this cluster all the time. If we could get something figured out.
And maybe you're putting, maybe you can have the minutes and not, like Brian said, it only needs to be what was voted on and like a brief description
But
of
then there's
why.
things that.
And then all the extra detail and clutter, you can just have that on the audio.
That's what,
Kind of what we were,
Kind of what we're saying.
what
Sort
we're
of
saying.
like she said, the outline of.
if we do the outline and we do the basics of who talked for each of those things and for or against, or, just
But
the
as
small basics.
far as
like
the
an outline.
audio recordings
And
and
then add that to the
digital
bottom.
recordings, things like
Right.
that, there is like CD-ROMs, which there are some in the office there that have some of the meeting recordings. Those, after so many years, I think the CD-ROM could potentially degrade to the point where it won't, it's like that data is not gonna last
So-
100 years.
so
Well,
you're-
and realistically, how far are you away from a day where there is no such thing as a CD-ROM in a computer?
There's a lot of
Well,
computers that don't.
The only way to retain data permanently, long-term, is to have it in multiple locations.
In multiple formats.
Well, like on servers and things, that you know, if you lose one, it's still on the other location.
Right.
It's always on like a new data hard drive or something that's not like, you know, over 10 years old.
Right.
So you may have to subscribe to some sort of like a cloud backup solution in addition to keeping things on the computer in the office. Because if the computer crashes, you're kind of out.
Yeah.
Paper don't sound so bad after all.
Paper was in there. I can't do it
Okay.
on paper, I have to have it in my hands.
Well, this is where, we're just getting this started. You know, Aaron, could you be able to work with Rebecca on some of your suggestions that you have to have her mock up some of our minutes? To give an example?
Excellent.
That'd be great, and, you know, we can have it so we can look at it at the next,
July 22nd, public lands.
right, but I'm saying some other ones too that we can do to give some other examples, probably a couple different formats so we can see it. One, you know, showing possible the actual audio recordings on it and video, and I mean, I'm just asking you, are you able?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. That satisfy, that we get some, just examples. Go ahead, Bruce.
I got two things. I got one is you guys are gonna have to come up with a record retention policy for city council.
Right.
I mean, everybody else has a records retention policy. I know Joyce has her own.
We have one.
We have one. I believe we do.
Yeah.
Well, when it comes to these electronic notes.
Would you be able to look into that?
Yeah.
And then the other half of it is, you know, I don't want to see city council get mired up in 6-month and year-old information that nobody knows what we're even doing. That's what's so upsetting to me. It's almost like we're regressing backwards. It's like, you know, a traffic commission. When's the last time we've heard anything about traffic?
We haven't even had a meeting in over a year.
Right, but that's.
Yeah, they had one back in like June or something, remember?
But the thing is, they'll have the meeting, but then they'll approve the minutes that were from 6 months ago. You know, and that's what it feels like all of a sudden we've become.
Because everything's been very confusing and off kilter because
You know,
it just keeps building.
don't know what's going on. I don't even know what's going on half the time.
And
So-
by the time we get through all the arguing and stuff, everybody's so fried, they have no clue as to what we just talked about. And
So Rebecca, you've got the committee meeting minutes, committees in separate files.
In, what do you mean?
So you have the minutes and,
On my computer?
yeah.
I have started putting them in separate, yes. It's in a committee meeting folder on my computer, and I have the date and what meeting it is with the draft. And then from the draft, I turn it to a PDF to put it into the agenda.
Kurt?
That computer, that was one thing I wanted to get implemented before I left, but I didn't, was there needs to be a backup service tied in with that computer, because right now, if it crashed, there's no backup of anything she's working on, or draft minutes, or nothing. That computer's the only place it's at.
Not necessarily,
Why?
because I'm logged into all of the programs, and it's, if I save it into the drive, it's there.
What drive?
The Google Drive, Word.
Oh, you're using the Google
Because I can
storage?
get onto it from the Surface Pro before it quit working. I could get onto it from there when I was at home.
But there's still a ton of other stuff on that computer,
Yes.
like past Word documents of legislation and stuff. I mean,
We can look into that to try to get, I understand what you're saying, we gotta back it up somehow. Vicki, you have any final comments? Because I'm gonna call the end of this.
No, I really thought your purpose tonight was to do away with paper minutes.
Oh,
No, no.
Oh, that's what I
No,
thought
we're trying to make
too.
it better.
Yeah,
No.
and as far, and I mean, I'm totally against getting rid of paper minutes, so I'm glad to hear
No,
that
I
that's
need,
not in your
I literally make
thought.
notes on my stuff the entire time, so I even like the printouts, I'm not gonna lie.
And just hearing what Aaron has to say sounds great. You know, I'd like to see what you come up with, but yeah, it's still in paper minutes,
And
that's
just
my
trying to
big
figure out a
thing.
way to make it more succinct, but make it so that you can see what happened when and.
Right,
And so we don't have words that are rambling on that
Aren't necessary.
is and was and, so that
Yeah,
we don't have
if
those
it's short and
words.
succinct, it's not even, you don't even have to get into the full sentence form. It's
I'm not
just the
criticizing
information
that
there.
on-
It's because everybody does things differently. Everything says things differently. I correct Kurt's grammar constantly. He uses the word seen in so many horrible spaces, but at the same time, that's because I was raised by a grammar Nazi. So I get that. So trying to figure out ways to get, so that everybody can be on the same page, it's not an argument anymore. I prefer it. I'd like us all to have the information, and that's what it boils down to.
thank you.
No problem.
Yes.
I provided you all with an email that has Robert's Rules of Order, Ohio Revised Code, everything legally related to minutes. You all have gotten an email
Yep.
with that stuff provided to you. So when you're making these decisions, I ask that you also look at that.
Yep.
Make sure we have.
So
Okay.
can I at this time make a public records request for that email and have you send that to me as well?
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. I will.
Kurt,
I will Kurt.
I would like to see legislation regarding minutes and recordings that encompasses not just council, but all the other meeting, like BZA meeting, traffic commission meeting. I would like to see those meeting minutes and audio recordings placed on the website. There's no technological reason why they can't be. We have the technology. It's gonna be the year 2022 here pretty soon. And since those other departments do not fall under the council, you know, you can't tell the other departments administratively, okay, you know, make sure you're doing this. I think there needs to be legislation that says the city's gonna retain or put all these minutes and recordings on the website. I tried to get the other departments to do that, they didn't listen to me.
Okay. Yeah, you know, as you said, we can't force the others to do it, but maybe if we
Except
set,
through legislation, you can.
well, we'd have to have him look it up and how we can do it.
To go along with that, on Documents on Demand, there are folders on there already from where the BZA meeting stuff was, tree board meeting stuff was, auditor stuff, police report pages that they send out. None of that has been updated in years from anybody else.
In the tree commission meeting,
That's
I'd
what
like
she
to
said.
see them.
Tree Commission.
Can I just offer a suggestion? Send an email to each one of those people when you get a free moment and let them know that's there and revisit the, hey, this is here for you, and we you know, maybe the people that are in charge of those things have forgotten they're there. You know, you can't force them, but maybe if they just know
Well,
it's an
and
option.
looking at the fact of how many people have turned over. in
That's my
different
point, yeah.
places, And there is no thing saying, here's what we do.
Right.
There's nothing.
So even if that email gives them directions of how to upload said information, might not be a bad move. I know it's not your job really, but you're the one that's got the knowledge and the access to it to kind of just
You
quickly
spotted things
educate
other
the
people
rest of
haven't been
them.
looking for.
I could even help out, because I had training on that, so.
Tell them to call Kurt.
Kurt
Okay.
has volunteered to
With
assist.
that, I will
Move to adjourn.
move to adjourn
8:27.
at 8:27 PM.
Who and who?
I move.
I just moved.
Oh, I second. And then we're all in favor?
Aye.
Yes, aye.
8:28.